Hi guys, before we start, a small announcement. If you could all turn on your cameras, I think that would be great. Thank you very much. And with that, let me start today's session, a special interactive session under the project Avalanche. Avalanche is an initiative by the International Service Avenue of the Rotaract Club of Achievers Lanka Business School, focusing on professional development of the upcoming young leaders across the globe, where you can develop your skills and work ethics from talented individuals from leading industries in Sri Lanka. With that, let's move on to our first speaker this evening. He is a Deputy General Manager at Mars Holdings and also a Senior Lecturer at Achievers Lanka Business School. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Devinda Weerasekara. Sir, over to you.
Hello. Can everyone hear me properly?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, all good. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to speak to the young crowd, the Rotaract Club. So I was given with few topics, and I was told I can choose a particular area that I am okay to talk about, right? So I mean, since from what I gather, most of you all are not into corporate yet and will be soon moving into corporate, and a few of you all are already in corporate. So I will touch upon a couple of areas. I will not go on and on. I will just talk about a couple of areas that I learned when I joined my corporate at a young age, and which I feel would be relevant to you all, and yeah, which I was glad someone was there to guide me and advise on. So the first area, guys, so mainly I mean, work ethics, right? So as young professionals now who are looking to get into corporate and develop your careers, what do you mean by work ethics, and how can having proper work ethics help you succeed in your career? Now, if you look at companies, guys, see, y'all are now y'all are just getting into your corporate careers, right? So now, see, companies at this point are not expecting miracles and wonders from you, right? So now you all will start at a early stage, maybe intern, maybe trainee or executive, yeah, and then you will progress on. So at this point in time, guys, as organizations, what we expect from you all is basically few areas, right? Number one would be on attitude, right? So I think one key area that is very important to ensure that you all have very good work ethic, and to ensure that you are progressing your career, is your attitude. Now I'll take a few examples, guys. Now, see, in my career now, almost 9 years, I have worked with a lot of people. I have interviewed a lot of people, and I have supervised a lot of people. So now, one thing that I have seen is that sometimes when you all start working, and now when you sometimes start working with different teams in organization, you all will have to work with different teams, is always show the willingness to learn and ensure that you respect everyone, right? Because you will be working with different levels of people, different grades of people. Right now, just to give you one example, right now, I was working with this on a project maybe 3-4 years back at my previous organization, where under that individual was a very top student from Achievers, right? So I recruited that person, right? And this is not to condemn anyone, or this is not to put anyone. No, these are learnings that we all have to get, right? A prize winner basically, at a very SEMA prize winner. So now this person was working with on a project which involved different individuals from different departments, right? Now, at one point, I was also in a discussion. Uh, it, there were certain questions that were being asked, right? So at one point, this person had to propose and sort of do a presentation, and it when certain questions were asked on the requirement to justify. Uh, uh, you might think whether these things are happening in corporate. It is, right? So you should always be very humble about it. So this person said, I am a SEMA prize winner, right? So I know these areas really well, right? So I think this has to happen. Now, the moment that happens, guys, it shows that you don't respect people. You expect people to believe you just because you have a title, right? And that's not how it works in corporate, right? You can have batch top, you can have prize winners, titles, all of that you might have, but that does not mean you will succeed in your career, right? So what I believe is you have to be your basic stuff, basic area in ensuring good work ethics is attitude towards work, attitude towards others, and being humble, right? Never throw your qualifications, never throw your, you might know, right? But you should always hear everyone out, respect each other's opinion. You can always discuss, you can always debate, and then you can come to a sort of an agreement. But you should never ever, show that uh, better than everyone else. You're this, so everyone has to listen to you. That's not how it works. So, and also, uh, so humbleness, attitude, as well as, guys, now these days work ethics plays a very important role, because now a lot of us are working from home these days, right? And I'm sure all your lectures are also happening online, right? uh, so now, uh, as young professionals, when you join an organization, and it's most likely that you will have to work from home. And see, working from home, it could be taken in different ways, right? You could see it as an advantage, you can see it as a disadvantage, right? So see, one thing that you have to ensure is that when you're doing something like working from home, you have to be responsible, not to abuse it, right? Now, uh, uh, for example, uh, when you're given a particular work, you have to ensure that the work is done at that particular timeline, right? So sometimes what happens is, when you're working from home, there are, of course, other distractions at home, and uh, uh, that should not be quoted as a excuse for not doing work, right? I'm saying because I have come across this, especially with some interns that I work with. Uh, I mean, see, not that we are inhuman, but uh, you have to, that privilege is given with a certain level of trust, right? So that you have to ensure that those things are, you don't misuse that the level of trust that is placed. So always, guys, stick to the basics, right? What are the basics? Your attitude, your willingness to learn, right? Always respecting others, right? Hear out everyone's opinions, and of course, deliver work uh, as per the responsibilities that are given to you. And uh, 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 how do I take questions? Vihan, do I take questions now or at the end? How does it work?
Yes, sir. In the last 5 minutes, when your time is about to end, you can ask the questions.
Right. Okay. So I'll that's a very brief thing about work ethics, and based on certain things that I have seen and witnessed over my career, especially from young individuals who join corporate. Right. So the next area that I'll briefly touch on is on problem solving. Right. So on the problem solving, now one very important thing that you need to understand in problem solving, especially I'm talking mainly from a problem solving from a corporate company point of view, right? So when you do problem solving, the first thing is to now what do you mean by problem solving? Basically, there something has gone wrong, right? So you have to now find out what went wrong and how to correct. Right? Now, one thing that has to be one thing that I encourage a lot of people to do, and especially young people, is it also depends on the company culture. Is not to when there is a problem. Of course, it's important to understand what went wrong, who was accountable for what, who was responsible for what. Right. So it's important to understand that. But it's also important to ensure that uh, there is no or less blame culture. So what I mean by blame culture is the moment something goes wrong, if you start pointing fingers at each other, this person didn't do this person didn't do that, that's why it went wrong. So that's called a blame culture. So when there is a blame culture in place, it's very difficult to get things done, because everyone will be sort of pointing fingers at each other, and the issue won't get resolved. So it's important to understand uh, who was responsible, but it's also important when you're come across a certain problem in your organization, or uh, any project that you work with. I'm sure that you all are working in different projects as Rotaractors, right? So one thing that I have learned is understand who was responsible, who was accountable, but never blame anyone, right? Rather than that, talk to each other and understand, okay, what went wrong? How can I correct it? Right? How can we as a team ensure that this particular area doesn't repeat, right? Because I mean, you can always go and blame different people, but rather than that, repeat again. Now, in terms of problem solving, guys, now there are different stages in problem solving, right? So number one is basically understand what went wrong, right? Uh, so what went wrong? So in what went wrong, you have to understand two parts. Number one is what should have happened. The other part is what actually happened, right? So the difference between those two is what we call as the gap, right? Or the problem, right? That's the problem, right? So for example, let's say I should have finished a project on 20th November, right? But I I only completed it on 30th November, right? So that's the problem, right? So I'm explaining the different stages. What happened? So in that, what should have happened? What actually happened? So that is called the gap, right? The problem, the gap. So then the next question you need to ask yourself is, okay, now I have a gap. Okay. Now you have to find what we call as the root cause analysis, or we call it the RCA, root cause analysis. What's the root of the problem? What happened? Okay. Now there is a gap that exists. Why? Right. First you answer the what happened. Now you found the gap. Now you're asking, why did it happen? Okay. So then in the RCA, or the root cause analysis, you have to identify um, what exactly went wrong in which stage of the activity, right? Because when you're doing a project, you have a different action plan, right? This activity should happen on this date, this activity should happen on this date. Basically like a project. So in that project plan, you have to check, okay, where did we deviate? Where did we go wrong? Okay, identify that exact thing and understand then why did we go wrong? Okay, why did we go wrong? Maybe there was a delay in the communication. I'm quoting certain example, right? Maybe there was a misunderstanding, right? Or maybe there was an issue where one of your suppliers didn't deliver on time, right? There could be different reasons. So why part you have to understand, right? So when you have the why, that's your root cause analysis. Then you have to get your how. How means, how do I ensure this doesn't repeat, right? You have the what happened, then you have the why did it happen, then you have the how is, how do you ensure that doesn't repeat. So in that, depending on the project, right, there are different types of project. So in the how, you have to bring in two areas. One is how do I prevent it in the short term. Two, how do I prevent it in the long term, right? So how should be twofold, right? I mean, maybe something like a Rotaract project, maybe you can bring it in one shot, right? But if you take a bigger organizational project that goes on for months and months, you need to have a short-term plan and a long term, right? Okay, that's the how. Then the final one is who. Who is responsible and accountable? Accountable means answer. Accountable to ensure that this doesn't repeat, right? So those are the four main areas you have to do in the problem solving. I'm explaining in a very simple manner, right? I mean, there are different theories, right? There is something called 5 why theory and a lot of theories, but I'm just explaining, right? I mean, this is not a technical forum. I mean, just for young professionals, how do you do problem solve? What went wrong, right? What went wrong means what should have happened versus what actually happened. The difference between that is the gap. Then you go to why. Why did it happen? Understand against your activity plan. Where did the deviation happen? Okay. Then you come to the how. How do I ensure this doesn't happen again? Short term, long term. Then finally, who? Who should ensure that this doesn't happen again? So you have a responsibility, right? So for the deviation, okay, now for this action, this person has to ensure that this doesn't happen. This person has to ensure that this doesn't happen. Okay, so that is basically a very simple approach to problem solving. But also it's very important to now, okay, you can discuss amongst yourself, but it's important to now document it, right? Documentation part is important, and communication, right? It should be documented and communicated to everyone who is involved, as well as um, until the project team is sort of confident that this is solved, you need to also have a periodic review system, right? Maybe review it, right? Review it maybe monthly or weekly. Now in some of our projects that we do, we have weekly reviews to monitor this. We have monthly reviews to monitor this. Now because we have a plan in place, no? So now we need to check whether that plan is working. If the plan is not working, that's a different problem. That's another problem, right? So we need to monitor and see whether the plan that we have in place is working. Okay, and if it doesn't work, then you have to again see why it's not working. Okay, but mainly when you go through the what, why, how, and who, usually more than 90% of the time that works, right? And like I said, during all of these, right, you have to ensure that there is no blame culture, right? That's an important area, because then if the blame culture is there, then people will easily get demotivated, and when you start pointing fingers, there will be no unity among them, right? So very simply, those are the uh, uh, stages in a problem solving, and sort of an area that we need to look on, right? So I briefly touch upon two areas: the work ethics and problem solving. I'm happy to take any questions at this point.
If you have any
I mean,
questions,
other than these topics, also you all can ask me anything you want. That's fine.
of course, if you have any questions, you may unmute yourself and speak, or you can put your question in the chat box and we will answer. We'll direct it to Mr. Devinda, and yes.
So I have one question. So when there is a lot of work to do, when we are in a stress situation, and then we have to problem solve and use work ethics, how can we apply it onto that when there's a lot of work and everything needs to be solved? So if you're stuck, how to get out?
Right. So basically, you're talking about time management, right? So see, when you have a lot of work, right? Because now practically there is a limit that you can do. I mean, humanly there is a limit that you are capable of, right? So when you feel that you have too much of work, right? What I usually do is I put everything down. Okay. Uh, let's say I have 10 different projects to do. So what I do is I write all 10 down. Okay. These are the 10 things that I have to do. Then I also put out of the 10, when do I have to deliver? Maybe one I have to deliver this week. There's another one I have to deliver in another 2 weeks time, right? So I also put down when I have to deliver, right? So when you put down what you have to deliver and when you have to deliver, then automatically there is some level of prioritization that happens. Okay. Otherwise, you will be working on everything at once, right? So first of all, understand in a timeline when you have to do. So if there are certain activities you have to do later on, you have to deliver later on. So deprioritize them for now and prioritize what you have to do now. So let's say you have 5 things to do now. So at the same time, so 5 things to do at the same time, even if you feel that is too much, then you have to bring in another criteria. Now, first one was the time. The next criteria is importance, criticality, right? So if you have to do 5 things at once, then now rank it based on importance or criticality, right? So then automatically when you rank criticality 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then comes your answer. Okay, criticality 1 is what you have to do, maybe 1, 2, 3. So then now you have prioritized based on that also. Now the next thing you have to do is, now you're the one who has done it, no? But maybe your boss is expecting everything, right? So now you have to take it to your boss and say, boss, look here, I have these 10 things that are going on now, right? I looked at the timeline. So therefore, when I put the timeline, these are the 5 things I have to do now. Then when I look at the criticality of it, these are the 3 things, right? So therefore, what I will be doing is I'll be focusing on these 3 and delivering it by this day. These 2 I'll be delivering by this day, and these 5 I will be delivering it by this. Tell the boss and get the sign. That's it. Because I mean, see, sometimes I mean, it happened to me also, right? I mean, when you first join an organization, you want to impress everyone and you want to sort of show everyone that you don't want to say no, right? But at the end of the day, if you can't deliver, you will be seen as a failure, right? So rather than that, it's better that you prioritize your work and say this is what it is. And if the boss says no, okay, instead of this you do this, then that's fine, right? So you put that and you agree on. Right? That's what I would do.
Thanks.
Sir, I do have a question. I think this is related to work ethics. So when it comes to, we even talk about different cultures. So when you walk into, like when you start working at a company, sometimes it might not be like the ideal work environment that you hope for. Like maybe the co-workers that you meet with, the co-workers that you interact with, some might be like sort of, backstabbing, sort of like that. So I think what advice can you give us? Can you give us relating to that on how to really deal with such matter? Because sometimes you may feel like you're really alone. Because this is something that I've experienced myself too.
Right. Okay. Uh, so that's a good question because there are practically those sort of things happen, right? So how to deal with those things? So number one is understand. Now if you have certain issues with some of your co-workers, again, that's a problem, no? Right? So you have to now problem solve, right? You have to understand, okay, why if there is a problem, sort of understand why is this person having this problem with me, right? So in that case, I mean, if see, if number one is you can directly have a conversation with the coworker, right? Saying, okay, I have noticed these things, because sometimes what I have noticed is taking things head on is much better than silently waiting. So if you have a problem with a coworker, just ask, okay, I have noticed these things. Uh, what is it? Am I doing something wrong, or am I thinking in any way? So understand, right? So sometimes when you have a direct conversation, maybe naturally it might work out. If not, right, then I mean, see, it's also uh, about the it's also about the culture, right? I mean, if the organization's culture, right, uh, supports that, right? Now the culture in a particular team, the culture is also set by the boss, right? So if you feel that there is a different issue regarding that, because I'm not going into specifics because I don't know what sort of issue and all of those. So if you feel that there is a issue and some of the co-workers are not treating you properly, if the direct conversation with the co-workers doesn't work, I think the next has to be your line manager, right? So then I have a discussion with your line manager saying, not to I mean, at the end, if you can't manage it directly, don't suffer in silence. Always have this chat with your line manager and say, I experienced this problem, not to or put anyone down, but what would be your advice? Have a chat with them. I mean, the last resort, if that also doesn't work, I mean, then then I mean, you can always uh, discuss with HR, but I don't think it need to go that far. Uh, my way, how I would look at it is have a direct discussion with the coworker. If doesn't work, still I don't know what sort of problem this is, right? And then next would be to have a discussion with the line manager and get their advice. I mean, different companies have different cultures, right? It all uh, uh, the culture has a big role to play in this, but how I would take is those two routes.
Thank you very much, sir.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have said that you have managed many projects, right? So what are the project management skills we need to possess as individuals when entering the work field? Are there any that specific skills that we need to learn to be effective at managing a project?
Right. So, I mean, see, if you talk about qualifications, if you're doing CIMA or ACCA, you will anyway learn project management basics, right?
I mean like the practical side, not the theory.
Yes, yes. So the basics you will anyway learn, but when it comes to the practical work environment, if you're joining an organization for the first time and being involved in a project, right? See, the practical world is very different to what we learn in a CIMA or an ACCA theory, right? So there will always be learnings, and for the first project that you do, right? Uh, uh, there will you will have certain areas that you will struggle. You will have, because when you join a company for the first time, number one, you're also learning what that organization is about, and you're also learning what that project is about, right? So at the very first time, you might not be able to get it perfect. That's fine. Don't get demotivated. That's fine. That's how it works. I never got my project done successfully in the first time I did. That's how it is, right? There's a learning curve to anything that you do, right? Now, uh, see, you will, and the first project that you do, you will always be working under your supervisor, right? Then the supervisor will be guiding you on the activities to do. Now, when the supervisor gives you the activities to do, then you have to ensure that those activities get done on time. Now, always when you're taken into a project, right, the basic advice that I can give you is maintain an activity list. We call it a TNA, time and action plan, or a project plan, right? So maintain a proper time and action plan, maintain a project plan, right? And see, the basics of project management is, now you have a list of activities, completing those activities on time is the basic, right? So very first project, my advice to you, always have a time and action plan or a project plan. And the basic, right, you have to be brilliant at your basics. Brilliant at your basics means have the action plan, follow it up, make sure it's done on time. Then automatically, through trying to do that, you will get learnings saying, okay, now this particular activity we have this complication, this particular activity we have this problem, right? Then you will have to sort of talk with your supervisor and say, okay, how do we manage this, right? Then you bring in your what we call as the backup plans or the contingency plan and see how it works. So the basic advice to you is maintain a project plan, follow it up, and ensure it's done. And if you see that it's getting delayed, don't wait till the last moment. Call it out well in advance based on what you see. This is getting delayed, right? And very first project, don't expect wonders. It's not going to happen because you're learning the organization, you're learning the project. There is always a learning curve, right? So second, third, fourth project, then by that time you will know exactly what to do, right? I hope I answered your question. If I haven't,
is there like a template for a project plan, like anything that a good project plan should have, or is it just a piece of paper that says what to do and when?
Yeah, so if you ask me, see, a good project plan should ideally, number one, have what are you trying to achieve, right? The objectives of the project, who's involved in the project, right? What do you want to achieve, who is involved, and also now to what you want to achieve is basically what we call as the project objectives, right? So to get to the project objectives, there are different steps, right? Not that you immediately get to the objective. To get to from point A to point B, right, there are activities that you have to follow, right? So that activities, even a basic Excel is fine, right? Now you don't have to have big project management tools to do this. A basic Excel itself is fine. list down the activities, objectives, who is involved, list down the activities, and for each activity, have a timeline. Okay, when should this activity be completed and who is responsible, right? Okay, then follow it up, right? If you are the project manager, if you are the project lead, follow it up. Activity A should be done by this date by this person, right? So then you have to follow up and ensure that those activities are made. You don't need sophisticated tools. Even a basic Excel is fine, right? Excel is more than enough for you. I mean, if you go into different tools, there is VCO and all of these project management tools, right? But a basic Excel is more than enough for you to maintain, right? Project objectives, project team, deliverables, the activities, timeline, and the responsibility.
All right,
Can
I
I
think
ask
we.
a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello everyone, good evening. So my question to you will be, I'm currently pursuing a cost and management accountant. What is that one thing I should work on, as I'll be interning from next month onwards for my professional and personal development?
Right. Now, are you you're following management accounting, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, like I said, see, when you're interning, the company is not going to expect you to do wonders, right? Because you're new to the organization, and the company knows that you're just starting your career, so now the company is not going to expect big things from an intern, right? But the important thing is the very first topic I touched upon, work ethics, right? What the company will expect from you is doing the work that they give you, right? Now, what sort of work will they give you? I don't know, right? But so from an intern, basically what the company expects is attitude, right? Good attitude towards whatever the work that they give, and the passion. Because I mean, as an intern, you're not going to, maybe you will not get very strategic high level projects, right? Sometimes you will get that when you become executive, senior executive, likewise. But at an intern stage, maybe the company will not give you a very high level, very important project, right? But as an intern, what's the attitude you display, right? How committed are you towards to achieving the work on time, and with a satisfactory level of quality, right? And how passionate are you about this, and how is your thinking, right? Are you, I mean, see, even as an intern, you should be able to question certain things, question and learn, right? If there is something that you don't understand, question. If there is something that you feel, you see, even from a, now sometimes you don't talk because people will think we are an idiot, right? Don't think like that, right? Whatever the question you have, ask, because no one is going to question you when you are an intern, because you're there to learn.
Yes.
Right? So you can ask any question that you want, right? Now, if I go and ask a basic question, people will think I'm an idiot, right? But an intern asking a basic question, it doesn't matter, right? So you're there to learn. So again, to summarize, attitude, willingness to learn, okay? Question wherever you don't understand, where you feel it's not right, question, right? And also commitment to work and respect to others, right? I mean, definitely you will require, I'm talking from a work ethics and your personal traits point of view, but of course you will need the basic knowledge. If you're interning in finance, of course you might have to have knowledge on your P&L and your how to do a payback calculation and all of those. The technical knowledge is different, right? I mean, whatever you learn in your CIMA or ACCA or whatever, that the company will expect you to have a basic knowledge, right? They will guide you in how to do an NPV, but obviously the basic stuff they expect you to have. That's why they hire you as an intern, looking at your qualification. But from a personal trait perspective, those are the areas that companies really look at an intern and judge them from.
Thank you so much. Surely I'll follow this.
I think with the time constraint, maybe that's all the questions we can have for this session. So let me take a moment and thank Mr. Devinda for joining with us today. I think there was a lot of knowledge and experience from your end shared. And once again, thank you very much for enlightening us and also making time from your end among your busy schedules.
No worries. So thanks for having me. All the best, guys.
Thank you, sir, once more. With that, we move on to our second speaker today. This person is no stranger to achievers, and this person is no stranger to Rotaract, and especially Rotaract achievers. She's currently an assistant manager at UDN Assurance. When I say no stranger to Rotaract achievers, that's because she is one of our beloved past presidents, and now currently serving as the Assistant District Rotaract Representative. So welcoming Rotaractor Sathma Jayasinghe. Over to you, Sathma.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Rini, for that introduction as well. So yes, this is no strange stage for me, I guess. It's a lot of talent from achievers as well. But once again, welcome to all of you as well. So I've been given a few topics. So let me quickly go through each of these topics. And I'll start off with my personal favorite, time management and everything to do with that. So I'm not obviously going to go into a very detailed discussion because if you know me, you know that time management, productivity, habit building, all of these is, I could go on forever about these topics, but I would say, all of them fall under a certain basket, the same kind of basket, but they're all different eggs in the basket, right? So time management is also very, very large. So we can, sort of divide it into certain areas. But because it's a very limited time, I won't go into the details of it. Rather, I take up some key tips and tricks of sorts, and I will take you guys through those things, through those tips of time management. So I wouldn't like to call it time management. So before we get into the session, let me clear this out for you. I really don't like calling it management, but rather I would say it's about making the most of my times, because it's not possible for you to manage your time throughout, right? So before you actually feel like you can now be productive for the rest of your lives and manage your time for the rest of your life, let me burst that bubble and say it's a fluctuating curve, right? Sometimes you manage it really, really well, and sometimes you don't. And this depends on yourself, like your personality, your mood, what kind of projects you're working on, what kind of work you're working with, what kind of people that's around you, and the workload, and also your mood, once again, your health and well-being, your mindset, and all of that, right? So it's a fluctuating curve, but I will try and maybe tell you some tips to make it at, bring it to maybe not your peak, but at a maximum, as to your maximum rather, right? Whenever possible. So the first thing when it comes to making the most of your time is knowing that time is yours, right? It's no one else's, and it's your own time. We all own our time. And that's a really nice thing to know, because the moment you realize that it's yours and it's yours to give away when you need it, you realize the value of it. You realize how important it is, right? Because you can never get it back. So of course we talk about how time is precious, and once it's gone forever. But have you really taken a moment to think of how we own our time and, what we do with our time. The reason as to why I tell this and why I'm starting off with this is that because it's your time, you're choosing to do what you want. I often hear people say, I'm too busy to do this. I myself might have used that example a couple of times, or that statement, right? We always say, I'm sorry, I'm just stuck with a lot of things. I just have so much going on. Yeah, of course, we use that in daily conversations, but you realize that when it's yours, you pick the things that you want to do ultimately. Let's say you have a project going on or you have an exam coming up. Instead, you're on your phone, you're playing a game. You made that decision to play the game because in your head, you think that's more gratifying and that's more satisfying. So I'm choosing to do that particular activity instead of studying because it's my time and that's how I spend it. It's okay as long as you're mindful about it. Just the other week, I had something important that I had to do, but also at the same time, I felt like, no, I need to take a moment for myself and instead, listen to some music or something else. And I chose to do that. The moment you intentionally make those decisions, that's when you realize that you have so much power to do and you have so much control of your time, of your time, right? So that's something we all need to learn and establish before we actually move on to how we utilize this time that we own. So now that we've established it, let's move on to some tips and tricks as to what you could do better with your time. Firstly, I would say, or rather now secondly, I would say, given that your time is very precious and it's valuable and it's yours, you need to know what you should do and what you shouldn't do. There's a really good book. I'm not sure who the author is. I actually don't remember, but it's called Hell Yes or No, right? So when you pick something to do, if you're like, hell yes, this is what I want to do, that's something you should invest your time on and your energy on. If you're like, maybe, but I don't know, then that's probably something you shouldn't be doing. Right? Because it's not worth that, because you're not as excited as you are about that other thing. So that's something to, that's something you could use to decide if you want to do something or if you want to consume your time and also your energy, because it's not just your time that you're giving away, it's also your energy, that you're spending or sharing with someone. If it's a group hang, if you're really excited to see your friends, then you should definitely go for it. You might be having a lot of other things, but if this is something that, and it's truly something that excites you, you should go for it. But if you're thinking, no, I think I should study today, but they're calling me, then it's a no. You can learn to say no. I think I've also dealt with this for some time. I'm sure I would have told you all before also, right? I have trouble saying no to people. I used to have a lot of trouble saying no to people. And whenever someone asks me, I would just drop everything and be like, oh, okay, yes, I'll be there. Oh, I'll come, I'll support. And sometimes it wasn't, it wasn't worth my energy and my time, but I still did it because when they ask, I'm like, I can't say no to this person. I can't say no to him or her. So the first thing you should know is that it's okay to say no, because like I said, it's your time that you're sharing with them. If right now I'm choosing to be here to spend my time having this session, right? That's because I'm excited about it and I want to share. It's not because I'm being forced. If I was genuinely occupied with something else, that's my responsibility, or something else that's exciting me, I wouldn't be here. I would have said no, right? So it's okay to say no to people, and to say if you have too much going on, you can always say, look, I'm so sorry. I have this particular commitment, or I have a few other commitments going on. I won't be able to spend my time with you. That's completely fine, because as long as the other person understands that, they also start valuing your time. So that's basically, the second tip of sorts, a mechanism to say hell yes or no, right? So I'll go into the third tip, I guess. I think this was slightly touched upon by the previous speaker as well. It's to maintain your to-do lists and your priority lists. I think I've spoken so many times to members of Rotaract Achievers about this and how important this is. And I've been doing this for basically as long as I can remember, right? Even when I was in school for a certain extent. And then I properly got into it after I joined Rotaract, and after I realized that there's so much things, going on, and there's so much that you can do with your time. I do use, in terms of specifics, I use a manual one as well as a soft copy of a to-do list. I use a certain website, I use a certain application to track all my work and Rotaract related matters, but I also maintain a physical to-do list for everything else, that's personal, maybe university activities, maybe little things. Even if someone asks me a favor, like, can you share this document, I write it down so that I don't forget. Human brains are not for storing, it's for getting ideas, generating ideas, right? So if you want something, you need to write it down if you want to retain it. So everything, all of that, I jot down on my notebook. And I generally like the feeling of crossing things off. It's very satisfying. So if you guys want to give it a try as well, I think that's step number one, is to maintain your to-do lists. It's very, very important. And to, like the previous speaker said, and to maintain that priority list, what you need to maybe do today and tomorrow, and you can align it. Even if it's today, you can have one task that needs to be done immediately, right after you finish your to-do list. What should I attend to? And what's next? You can prioritize it in that way as well. So this is something, like a lot of people do, but I haven't tried it out. They have one daily highlight of sorts, right? So they have one thing that they want to accomplish throughout that day. It could be small, it could be big, but that's like their daily highlight, and everything else falls after that. I've never tried it for myself, but I've been told that it works for a lot of people, so I'm just throwing it out there as well. So that would be my, I think, third tip. Okay, so that's your to-do lists and your maintenance. So if you want more, I'm not going to go into detail. If you want to know what I use in terms of my productivity tracker, or the applications that I use, you can reach out to me maybe after this session, and I would be gladly willing to share those details as well. Coming to my next point is time blocking. So this is essentially blocking a certain amount of time for your tasks, or if we take it in technical terms, I think a calendar. Okay, I didn't really use a calendar when I was active at Rotaract Achievers much, but now I live by my calendar a lot, because I feel like that really helps me organize and avoid a double booking, or committing for something without knowing I've already committed for something else, which is always an awkward conversation when you have to reschedule, right? That's one thing. And I can block my time away, say, okay, 6 to 8, I've given it to this particular session by the Rotaract Club of Achievers, right? I've taken it off my calendar, so no one else can come up and say, give me work or tell me something to do during that particular time, because that time is dedicated to this particular commitment, right? So, and during that moment, I will only focus on this. I will give my undivided attention for this session, on conducting this session or having this conversation with the team, right? So time blocking is very important. Even though I didn't use a calendar properly, I used to have time blocking back when I was the secretary a lot. I used to have these time slots every night for secretarial duties and Rotaract, right? So I would have university in the morning, I would come home, I would, work on my homework or assignments or whatever, right? So I would have a slot in the night for Rotaract. It could be a couple of hours, it could be 3 hours. And, it's a permanent slot that I solely focus on Rotaract work. And now, because I have work, I have a slot for work itself. Then I have, a Rotaract, I have multiple slots. Then university, I have a specific time as well, which is now the least amount of time that I have. So you can book, you can block your time in an organized way, in whatever the way that works for you. Even though Rotaract in the night worked for me, it might be different for you, right? If you work in the night, you can have Rotaract or whatever, anything else in the morning. So time blocking is something you can do. You can use your calendars, you can use Google calendars or Outlook calendars. I've plugged all my calendars. I've plugged my Rotaract calendar, my personal calendar, and my work calendar into one system so that I know when I'm free during a particular day and when I'm not free during a particular time. So that really, really, takes it to the next level. So even if you don't have like a lot of things going on, even if it's for your personal activities, say, okay, 1 hour for studying, you can still, drop a note so that you know this dedicated time slot is blocked for studying, right? Okay, so that's another tip. So moving on to, I'll quickly, I think, rush through my tips. So the next tip would be about allocate, like, since I've been talking about allocating the time, the next tip is to allocate the right amount of time, because believe it or not, a certain activity sort of expands to fill the time that we allocate for it, right? I think there's a scientific term, it's called the Parkinson's law. If you have done your research about these productivity things and like all of these, you would have come across this certain tip. It's called Parkinson's law. So say I have a report to do or a presentation. I make a lot of presentations for work, right? And I dedicate 1 hour for it. I booked saying, okay, 3 to 4, I work on this project X presentation. And believe it or not, I take 1 hour, but if I don't allocate 1 hour, I might even take the whole day, right? I've been called a perfectionist of sorts. So I will, think about the alignment issues and, moving a picture to the right angle for like the entire day. And I have done that in the past. I've taken weeks sometimes just to come up with a different term for a single word. So if I allocate 2 weeks for it, I will definitely take 2 weeks for it. But if I allocate 1 hour, I will most likely take 1 hour. So it could obviously fluctuate a little bit plus or minus, but usually it sticks around that time, because unconsciously we say, okay, we only have 1 hour. It's probably why I'm a procrastinator. I procrastinate so much. I wait till the last moment because I feel like then, I don't have to spend weeks doing that activity, whereas I could do it in 1 hour before the exam or before my deadline. Not the right takeaway, but it tends to sort of time expands to fill the slot that we allocate for it. So that's something you could use. So when you do have activities going on, when you do maintain that to-do list, put like a slot of time that you can dedicate for it. Right. So the next tip, I'm reaching the end of these list of tips, is delegation. This is very, very crucial. And it's not just for presidents and secretaries to delegate work. It's for yourself as well. If there's something that someone else could help you with, or that someone else could perhaps do it better, reach out to that person, ask for help, and delegate as much as possible, because there's no saying that you have to do everything that's going on, right? You can ask for help even in a work setting, in a Rotaract setting, for sure. There's a lot of help. All you need to do is reach out. You can't expect people to come to you and offer help. There are a few who would do that, but not everyone. But if you go and ask for something, they'll definitely help out, right? So, delegate and ask for support when you can't handle, when you feel like there's a lot going on. Just reach out to someone else and ask if they could do it, or if they could help you with it, right? So that dedication is also very important. Coming to, I think, the last couple of tips, I guess, is okay. One thing is to be conscious, like I said, of what you do, right? This tip is related to that. It's to be satisfied with your work. I think this is more into procrastinating and then going into a little bit of time slump. The reason as to why I'm bringing this up as this is because despite me researching all of my time on time management and productivity and habit building, I'm a very big enthusiast about it. I still go into slums sometimes. I think I've mentioned it maybe. I still go into burnouts. I still go into slums where I'm very unproductive. But it changes the moment you realize that moment you realize you're in a slump, it sort of changes for me. And then I start being, okay, wait, this is what I need to do. Sometimes you stick to a routine for so long, it becomes very dull and becomes very, very monotonous. So you need to change up things, right? So you do something that's different and you get back on track. And when you're in that slump, or when you're getting over that slump, you need to be satisfied with the choices that you need to make. I know a lot of us feel guilty for, sometimes we spend the entire day and we feel like we haven't done anything at all and that we've wasted our times. Don't feel guilty about it. I know it's really hard. You do feel guilty and you blame yourself, and then, you get stressed out about it, and it's a whole vicious cycle. But you can't keep on blaming yourself, because what's already gone is gone. Yes, think of it in a way where, okay, I did that for mental peace or for my happiness. If you watched movies all day without studying, maybe that gave you a bit of relaxation, and be happy about it. Be satisfied with the choices that you make and move on, because the more you feel guilty, the more guilty that you feel, like guilt that you feel, the rest of the days or the week that you're going to be unproductive as well, because you keep thinking about it and you keep going back to it, and you think more and more about it. So it's cluttering your thought process. So be satisfied with whatever that's gone, done and dusted, and move on with with tomorrow. So yeah, that's I think my tips. And one last tip, I think this is something that I do, that I've been doing and I've been telling people to do for a while as well. It's how I manage my WhatsApp. I wanted to touch on that, because I feel like a lot of us get lost when we get like so many messages and groups and all of that, right? So this is something that genuinely helped me to be more productive and not get distracted from WhatsApp. So of course, throughout the day, you will get so many messages from groups and from individual people, right? For me, of course, all my groups are on mute. You don't have to mute all of their groups. You can keep the important ones, or you can do whatever you want, right? But be it groups or be it individual PMs, what I do is, if there's something I need to do, even replying is a task for me. It consumes my time. It takes away a bit of my time, a minute or two, right? If I have to reply to something, I keep it. And if I have nothing to do with that chat, if it's a group chat that doesn't involve me at all, or that are not needed, even if it's a PM, it could be broadcasts. A lot of people send those now, especially in Rotaract. What I do is I archive everything. So in my WhatsApp, when you open it, it's just the things that I have to look into. If it's a reply, or if it's something, say someone asks me to share a document, or if it's something that I have to do in that particular chat, it's a reminder for me. So, and once I complete it, I archive it. So I try and do this, and clean out my WhatsApp so that I don't get distracted. And it's very, very like minimalist then, and it feels really good when you start doing that. And the chats that pop up in your text or your WhatsApp interface are the activities that you have to do. So that's also a to-do list at the end. So you clear it out, right? I know it keeps coming back on, but once you get into the hang of it, I feel like you'll really get to experience WhatsApp in a different way, and it might really help you out as well. So that's something I've been trying out for some time now, and it has really, really worked out. Because the moment someone sends a new message, you could, it comes back onto the chat, so you can see if it's important, if it's not, archive. If it's something you have to do, keep it, do it, complete it, archive it. It's just, that's like the process that has been working out for me. So I thought I'll share those as well. So that's about time management, or how to make the maximum of your time. There's so many other things that you could do if you look up or if you talk to other people. These are the ones that worked out for me and has been working out for me. But there are so many methods as to how you deal with time and whatnot. So like I said, I know I took more time than I expected, but you could also try out these things and see if it works for you. And if you want to, have a more detailed in-length conversation, you can always do that with me as well. There are 2 other topics that I was asked to talk about, so I'll go into the next 2 very, very quickly. The second point would be, the topic would be about finding comfort in public speaking. I'm not sure if I do find comfort in public speaking, but nevertheless, I will tell you, I think I'm okay. I think I don't get like very, very nervous. So I think I'm good when it comes to that, in terms of, keeping my nervousness or whatever in check. So yeah, so I'll tell you what works for me, right? Just a couple of things that has worked out for me. One thing is, okay, so this is, I was never a proper Toastmaster or anything like that. This is but we had a partnership from Achievers back in the day where we had a series of, training sessions with Toastmasters, a certain Toastmasters club. And this was shared through one of those workshops, right? It's the 5 P's of vocalization. It's the 5 P's of public speaking. It's pitch, pace, pause, projection, and personality. The moment I found out these 5, it sort of changed how I spoke and, how I do sessions and how I do speeches. Once again, it's pitch, pace, pause, projection, and power or personality. So your pitch is, of course, when it's very monotonous, so you have some lecturers who just go on talking and talking and talking. You get it, right? It's kind of like how when you're excited, you tend to talk high. You're like, oh my God, you meet someone, you're like, oh, hi. It's high tone. And when you're, sharing your condolences, or if it's a sad situation, you're like, look, I'm so sorry to hear that. You sort of lower your voice, right? So that's pitch. So that's something you could use to be with. Pace is something that I'm struggling with because I tend to talk fast. I've been working on it. But if you talk really, really fast that no one can understand, then you're probably not going to understand. You have to really put yourself, and it's going to be a whole mess, right? Did you get it? Probably not. So you need to maintain a certain amount of pace, certain amount of speed when you're talking. And if you talk really, really slow, people are going to get bored. So that's pace. So pause, like I just did, a dramatic pause so that people grasp onto what you're saying better, right? So that's your pause. Projection, you can avoid this in virtual settings because, you feel like you're talking to yourself. But in a physical setting, now that, we've started, in terms of Rotaract, we've started back on with our physical projects. I see some of y'all going in and giving felicitations, right? So this is a place where you could practice this. When you go into that felicitation, make sure you look at the entire audience. And in an installation setting, you could also look at the head table, right? So if you just talk to one individual or like a corner of the screen, that's going to be unappealing, right? So you need to make sure you talk to everyone and try and, look at everyone in the audience as a whole. Right? I know some people say you can, look at directly, like you can stare at one thing if it helps. But yeah, for a starter, for a beginner, if you really feel uncomfortable talking to everyone in the audience, you could do that. But you could just look at everyone. You don't have to, make direct eye contact with them. You can just look at everyone in general and talk to the entire audience because, then they feel like they're a part. If you just talk to the left side, this is my left, of the entire room, people are going to feel disconnected, right? So that's projection, and then how you project. And then the power of your voice and the personality. Your power is obviously you can scream or you can talk very, very softly, right? So you need to balance that out. I think when you listen to news anchors, they do it really nicely. Sometimes they speak with a lot of volumes and sometimes they speak very softly. So you can balance those out. The moment I got to know these things, I feel like that sort of changed how I spoke. So once again, that's pitch, pace, pause, power, and projection, right? So that's your first tip. That's my first tip to learn about this. If you want to, look it up, or I haven't done that before, but if you want to Google it or look it up, you can feel free to do that as well. My second and the most important tip is to believe in yourself in your speaking and to become so a lot of people say be confident. How do you become confident is the issue, is the real struggle, right? Everyone says be confident, but I don't know how to be confident. So let me break it down. In my opinion, for me, confidence is believing in myself. So I believe that I can speak really, really well. Probably not. Yeah, of course not. But I do believe that. And I feel that's one thing I believe. The next thing is that I believe that everyone in the audience will, love to hear what I'm talking about, and they'll believe me to the utmost, and they'll enjoy it. And I believe it. Probably not true. And if you look at this audience, they'll be like, no, she was okay. But nevertheless, I like to think that what I'm saying is valuable and everyone's listening, because it gives me confidence, right? So that's another way to believe. And the next thing is, even when you're lying, lie with confidence, right? Believe in what you say. Even if I'm making, I've been a little gifted with the act of bluffing. So even if I'm lying, I lie like I mean it. And people think it's true then. I mean, if it's a public speak or like a speech or something, and it doesn't really, carry weight, even if you do lie, then, bluff with confidence, right? Even if it doesn't make sense, think that it makes sense and that is very logical, and go with it, and then speak well. Like, how people sometimes use the wrong lyrics when they're talking, and they just sing it with confidence anyways, but it's fun to listen to them. Something like that, even if you're lying, even if you're not telling the truth, say it like you mean it, and eventually, it will become the truth, or it will, people will feel like it makes sense. It's kind of like when you're going to sleep, you first pretend to sleep, right? But then you actually fall asleep. That's how it starts. And you do it with, so much confidence. You pretend to sleep like you're sleeping for real, but you're actually just pretending until you actually fall asleep. So even if you're lying, lie with confidence. So, you believe in what you say, right? It might not be the perfect thing to say, but believe it. Think that it is the perfect thing to say, and it's the right thing to say. Mistake. So you can realize how many mistakes that I've made throughout this entire session, right? But don't care about those, because if you worry about the mistakes that you did, then it's not going to work out for you, right? You're going to struggle with the next part of the speech also. You can miss out on grammar, you can miss out on pronunciation, you can miss out on the way you talk, what you said, you can miss out on words, you might be using the wrong word at the wrong time. Sometimes that's still okay, because ultimately what matters is how you get through it and what you project. If you fear of all of these mistakes that you're going to make, it will reflect poorly on you, right? Because all of these is ultimately how you project yourself. Yeah, it's your personality, it's the energy that you show. So for me, in terms of a Rotaract setting and a work setting, when I do sessions at work, even, your personality and your energy is 80% of the battle. What you say, how you say it, and all of that, that energy, that aura that you carry with yourself, around yourself, is most of it. So as long as you have that, covered, as long as you have that figured out, then you can, then you can look into what you're saying, and if it's logical and if it makes sense and everything, because how you talk is the biggest part of it. If you look at really good speakers who would speak, if you look at some of the past DRs that we've had who've been amazing speakers, if you look at some of our past presidents, from achievers, we've been having really, really good speakers. So it's their energy, it's their personality that they carry. That's most of it. And then comes to the actual technical stuff behind public speaking. So those are the two things that I really, really believe in, that what really works out for me and what makes me, I would say, not as nervous as I used to be. When I just started out with Rotaract, I was was never like a really, really good speaker. I'm still not, of course. But I've been really, I've improved myself, and I can see that for myself. I don't know if other people would say it, but I know that I've improved. And partly it's because of these two things. And also, of course, when you are comfortable, as in when you've done it so many times, practice really helps, right? So then you get comfortable in that because you feel like, yes, I've done it so many times. These are people I know and whatnot. Something I really wanted to point out also when it comes to this, before I end it very quickly, you hear people saying, picture the audience naked. I haven't done that ever. But why I pointed it out is that it's not about, picturing them naked. It's about what this sentiment means, right? It means that when you're naked, you're vulnerable, you feel ashamed, or maybe, you feel shy. When your audience is vulnerable, you feel like you have more power over them. That improves your confidence level, right? So it gets plugged into how you project yourself, how the confidence that you carry, which is why I said confidence is important in however way that you assume it. You can make the audience vulnerable and have confidence, or you can just, pretend that everything you say is very important and go for it like that. So yeah, that's basically how I find comfort in public speaking. And those are my tips when it comes to speaking to an audience. I wouldn't say public speaking per se. I would say speaking to an audience, be it Rotaract, be it work, or be it university presentations. So the final thing, again, that I will talk about is controlling your emotions and your mentality in your work environment. I won't go into detail about this as well. I'll just quickly tackle, like I said, what works for me, right? So I'm going to be very controversial in this point, because there are certain things that really upsets me. Trust me, I've cried once in university back in the day, because we used to have this very strict lecturer. She doesn't let you come in if you're late. She kicks you out. And like once I got like 10 minutes late and I was kicked out, and I cried over it. Right. So that's a very poor example of me trying to, keep my emotions in check. But for the majority of it, I keep my emotions in check when it comes to Rotaract and when it comes to work. The first point that you need to do is you need to identify what the emotion is. It could be anger, right? A lot of us do feel anger and aggravation towards people. You feel like you're angry at a person or at a situation. It can be frustration. It could be irritation or frustration. It could be that you're annoyed with the situation and not particularly a person. It could be worry or nervousness. Like I was saying, if it's a public speech that you have to make, you could be nervous, you could be anxious about a project that you need to do or a task that you need to do. So it could be that. It could be dislike. You might just not like that person. There's nothing wrong with it. You might not want to work with him or her. So you might not you might dislike a person or a situation. And finally, it could be disappointed or unhappiness. You could be disappointed or unhappy with the work that you do. I haven't heard this ever, but being a Rotaractor might make you unhappy. Again, I haven't heard this ever. I'm just giving an example. So these are different types of emotions. So you need to firstly identify what it is in order to address it. So if it's frustration, or if it's annoyed about a certain work, you can speak up. If it's a person, you can speak up. Even if it's dislike or unhappiness, I would suggest to speak up and sort of clarify it along the way, because you shouldn't do what makes you unhappy. You need to, you shouldn't do what makes you negative as a person, right? So you can always speak it out. If it's anger, it's momentary. Don't send out emails when you're angry or reply to people when you're angry. If it's really anger, it's momentary. Know that it's going to fade away eventually in a bit of time, mostly after 5-10 minutes, sometimes even, right? You're really angry at a person at that point, but a few minutes after, you're no longer angry. So don't make decisions while you're angry or annoyed. Even if you're annoyed at a situation, don't make harsh decisions when one of those emotions is running, right? So if you're angry at a person, take a step back. What I usually do is, at a person or a situation, I sort of not talk to them, right? It's not the silent treatment per se, but it's for me to identify, or for myself to get back into that state of being neutral, right? And then only I reply or make a decision. Because when you're angry or when you're frustrated, it's very likely that you would make the wrong decision in your life, right? Even when you're sad or upset or unhappy, sometimes you make the right decision. So when you make those decisions, you have to be neutral. So let it stay for a little bit. Time heals a lot of things. So stay for a little bit and see if that emotion fades away, and if it's just an emotion, because that's when you end up doing things that you regret, right? So that's something that that has sort of helped me out when it comes to keeping my emotions in check. So this really applies to your workplace and your Rotaract. So for me, when I Rotaract used to be kind of like my workplace, right? You get to experience a lot of different people, you get to experience a lot of different projects and a lot of different situations. So it's kind of like work too. So in all of these, emotions are going to play a very major role, right? Because you're tied up to your friendships, you're tied up to the people surrounding you, and all of this will affect. It might affect negatively, it might affect positively sometimes. So you need to figure that out. You need to identify the emotions that work in order to address them, right? So it's normal to feel all of these emotions. It's normal to feel frustrated or nervous or angry or disappointment or unhappy about certain things. But once you identify it, then you sort of realize what you need to do. If it's anger, you stay for a while, you think back. When things are neutral, you look at it and you feel right. So I'll only address this issue once I'm no longer angry. If it's frustration or if it's something that you can control, if you can speak up, if you're unhappy with someone, or if you are not satisfied with someone, how they work or how they are speaking to you, it could be little things even. Speak up, say, look, your attitude towards me is affecting my health. It's making me unhappy. The way you work or the things that you say, it's making me very uncomfortable. So you need to speak up, and then you can clear the air. It's very professional. It's all and it's above a certain line. You don't take it personally. So that actually brings to my next point of keeping things professional, and something's personal, something's professional. You don't mix business with pleasure, right? So you need to keep things separate. Yes, you can have your partners from Rotaract or your work if work allows that, but even so, you can still segregate what you talk about, what you discuss. Because for me, when it's Rotaract and none of my personal issues. I might hate the person offline, or I might love the person offline, but for Rotaract, it's about how they work in terms of Rotaract. It's about the decisions that they make for the movement. When it's work, similar situation. I might love them offline, I might hate them offline. But when it comes to work, it's about the work that they do. And that's how you draw the line between professionalism and mixing your personal lives. Because I think all of us are leaders, all of us are in Rotaract, all of us are, being in the process of becoming better leaders. And for you to be a better leader, this is very, very crucial. It's crucial that you understand that there's something called professional work and your personal work, and that you don't mix those two, right? Because the moment it affects, the moment your personal decisions or your personal preferences affect your work, that's when things don't tally. I might not like a person, but doesn't mean that this person is doing a bad job on, their Rotaract work or their office work. So you need to make sure you give that recognition. Or if it's an undeserving person, you shouldn't, right? If it's your girlfriend or your whoever, if that person is not deserving of a certain title, then you shouldn't give, right? It's just an example, but it works for everything that you do. So that's basically how you draw that line to not mix your emotions with your work. So those are basically my tips and things. But if you do mess up, if your emotions do come up when you're talking to people, and if it's really difficult, you can always follow mindfulness, right? You can do those normal things that people say: take deep breaths, count to, I don't know what, 10, have that clarity, know that you're suffering, know that this emotion is working, and take precautions for it. You can, people do different types of things. People sometimes, there was a really good example from Rotaract itself, right? Back in the day when I was a president, there was a president of mine who openly said, I have a lot of things going on. I have a lot of emotions. I wake up at 5 in the morning every day and I cry for a little bit. Then I wake up at 5 in the morning, I cry till like 5:30, and then from that moment you're set for the day. Then you've gotten your emotions out of the way, you've taken it off, and now you can focus on your work. That's just an example to share. Like, you're not the only one. All of us are going through emotions, and it's what drives your work. Even if it's work, you might really love it, so you do well. You might hate it, so you might not do a good job. Those are also emotions, right? You need to figure out these emotions. Then that's when you start addressing them. You can do certain things, you can exercise, you can do whatever comforts you, but know what your triggers are and what emotions. So if it's a person, if he always talks and makes you angry, then that's a trigger for you. You know what not to do. When you're going for an interview, you wouldn't want that person to talk to you. So you can identify what triggers you and which activity triggers which emotion. So that identification is very important, right? Once you do identify that, you know what to do in terms of mitigating it. And always, when in doubt, take the high road. I know this is not easy. I know we in a way like being petty. As humans, all of us are, myself including. I would also do something petty sometimes, but I at least try to take the high road whenever possible. The other person might be in the wrong, but if it's beyond your control, if the fight is not worth it, then take the high road. If someone scolds you, don't go back at scolding them. I mean, unless it's essential, but I always take the high road, because it's not worth your time and your energy, right? Ultimately, it takes a bit of your time where you could have, gone out with your friends that time. So, when in doubt, be respectful and take the high road, because you never know. Sometimes the people you had all of these fights with might come back later in the future. You might have to work with them in the future again also, right? So you never know. And just let it go. All these experiences that you have, good and bad, be glad that it happened, because through even your bad experiences, you learn. It's always a learning. And being in Rotaract and being a part of, even in a work setting, right? You go through all of these experiences, both good and bad, but ultimately it's an experience. Ultimately, you learn something out of it, and be grateful that you learned something out of how people reacted, how people spoke. Even if it's something like that, even if it's something that triggers all of those emotions, all of the negative emotions, it gave you a chance to realize that you have triggers to these negative emotions. And now if it happens again, now you know what to do, right? It's an experience overall. So take it in a positive manner, take it in a positive light, be happy with whatever you do. So I'll just wrap this up, of course. Be happy with whatever the decisions that you make in terms of time, in terms of people, in terms of what you speak of. Be grateful that it happened. Don't look back. Just keep going forward and maintain that positivity. Don't let anything, emotions, people, things, activities, don't let any of those tell you otherwise or harm you or affect you negatively or poorly, right? So just guys, take it easy overall, and make, even if someone says something, it's okay, just don't give too much importance to something, because the things you think that are important right now won't be in the future, won't be in a few months, maybe not even in a few hours, right? You might win awards today, tomorrow chances are no one's going to remember. You might have that award at home, but you're not going to talk it and carry it everywhere with you. You're not going to take it to work every day. So the things that you think are important right now won't be anymore, right? So don't take everything so seriously. Just as in, don't, of course you need to take things seriously, but don't give so much importance to one. That's when if emotions take a lot of power over what you do, right? So those are basically my tips and advice and things like that. I'm sorry I took, I think, a lot of time. I tend to talk a little too much. Yeah, so back to the hosts, and thanks so much for having me as well. If there are any questions, if there's time, I could answer them as well.
Thanks a lot, Sathma. We do have time to take one or two questions. If anybody has questions, you can unmute yourself and speak up, or you can direct your question through the chat box. Meanwhile, I would like to remind you that there's a link in the chat box where you have to mark your participation, where if you haven't registered for the session, so please do register using that link in the chat box.
Hi, I have a question. So when it comes to time management, you said you were using some kind of applications online. So could you tell us a few applications you use, something so the others are able to know?
So for my personal tracker, I use something called Notion, which is free. There's a paid version, I think, as well, but I use a free version of it. There's a free version for students, if I'm not mistaken. So what I do is I have certain tabs on it, one for work, one for my habits. So I maintain habits, one for Rotaract and one for university, right? So what I do is in each of the tabs, you can think of it like a giant bristle board. You have your activities. So if this is the board, you have your activity 1, 2, 3, 4. And under each of the activities, you have the subtasks. So that's what I use. But you can use Excel Planner, which is also something that we use, which is something that I used to use as well and still do for certain work projects. You could use other applications like if it's like a project management application, you could use Asana, you could use Trello, you could use MS Projects. There are so many applications that you could use. But for personal things, Notion has worked really well. Or you could use Google Tasks. You can use the Google set of applications as well, because I've been using so far, like back in the day, I used to use Google Tasks, Google Reminders, and Google Notes to plug everything together. And that has worked brilliantly for me as well. I just changed it because I wanted a bit of, I wanted to be fresh and new. So which is why I changed it. So those are some of the tools that you could use.
Great, thanks. And there's and there's another question requested by one of our participants. So it's how do you talk to your head, like the boss, if you have a problem with him? This relates to the last topic you talked about, controlling your emotions and everything. So could you explain a little bit out there?
Okay. So if you genuinely dislike him or her, or if you feel like you can't work with your boss, I think that's something you need to move out of, because especially in a work setting, your boss or the person who you report to is the one who makes your life, happy or not. I would say, he's the one who decides your path. If you have a good time at a certain in the same company, one could have a really good experience, one could have a very bad experience. That's because of your boss, right? That's because of your mentor. He or she is the one who grooms you, and eventually you would end up taking all the good things and the bad things of this person, right? So if you genuinely can't work with him or her, I would suggest to remove yourself from the situation if possible, right? That's your first step. But if you still have to stay there no matter what, you can try talking to him or her. If it's something that can be, controlled and that can be rectified, you can go ahead and talk to this person and say, these things that you do is making me uncomfortable. And if that boss is understanding or whatnot, you can work along those lines as well, right? None of these fails, say your boss is one of those people who wouldn't listen to anyone, and if you go say this, you'll be fired, or something like that. I would say you can, of course, do your job to the best of your ability, and you could talk to someone else from the company, not saying go above him or above his head, but you can talk to your peers to see if they are also dealing with the same issue. You can have someone to talk to so that you can release all the frustration and the stress out and focus on work. A person shouldn't dictate as to how you feel, right? So you can focus on your work, do the work that is given to you to your best ability. It might be stressful, but it's an experience for you to learn from, right? So if you do your job part, you'll be satisfied because there's nothing wrong. But if you go and fight with him or her, or if you pull a scene or do all of that, it might affect poorly on you, right? So like I said, when in doubt, take the high road. That's what you could do if all things fail. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
If there aren't any more questions for today, I think we can wrap up the session. So we will give you another minute or two. If you have any questions, you should. I think since there aren't any more questions, we can wrap up for today. So thank you, Sathma. Thanks a lot. I think probably why there aren't any questions, because you mentioned, like you explained everything perfectly regarding to time management and how to control your emotions at a workplace. How do you take care of that and everything else? So thank you so much for making your time for us amongst your busy schedules, and as always, helping us out and educating us and encouraging us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me as well. I had a lot of fun.
With that, we can wrap up the interactive session under the project Avalanche. So once again, a huge thank you to Sathma Jayasinghe and Mr. Devinda for making their time for us to come here and to attend this session and to educate other others who have participated today, and also a special thanks goes out to everyone who joined the session today. Thank you very much. Without you guys, this event would not have been successful. So once again, thank you everyone. With that, we wrap up for today, and until we meet again, stay safe. Good night.